Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Clone Force 97. I'm your host, Brandon, and I'm thrilled to say the whole squadron is back in order today. We have Anthony, Ray, Bench, and Charles joining us. We're diving headfirst into episode 4 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. But before we get started, take a moment to support the show, smash that like button, subscribe to us on YouTube, and if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, hit the follow button and rate the show. It's quick, easy, and it helps Clone Force 97 grow so we can keep bringing you the content you love. With that being said, Anthony, welcome back. How are we feeling about episode 4?
It's great to be back. Thank you so much. So I missed episode 3, right? Like my whole
Yeah.
world has just been super crazy and I'm kind of lost. Uh Episode 3 was enjoyable. I liked it a lot. I think it was a little weaker than episode 1 and 2, but the introduction of the character Kim was really neat. They kind of spend a majority of the episode kind of building up, like, what is this character going to look like? You know, she has a history with Jod. Like, is she going to stab him in the back? Like, is she going to be kind of an unsavory character? And then she's just a cute owl, just adorable. The character design of the show is just great and a lot of fun. And I loved how she was like flying around and attacking Jod and just had a cool personality. It definitely kind of deepened the mystery, you know, with the star charts and everything. And I was super excited and super in a super rush, like to kind of get on my way. I was traveling a lot. But yeah, I'm still on board, still sold on the premise. I still enjoy the characters and the actors are doing a great job. No major red flags, nothing that's bothering me. And yeah, that's all I have to say about episode 3. It was solid, really enjoyable.
How are we feeling about episode 4 with everything that just happened with them thinking that they landed on At-Attin, but actually finding At-Achrann?
Episode 4, I think, has been the weakest so far. There was a lot that I liked. I liked their kind of exploring a new planet and one that's kind of eerily similar to theirs. And I'm excited to kind of see where that goes. But there was some goofy stuff. Like, and maybe you guys enjoyed it, but that character, the Troik girl that Neel had a little bit of a crush on. She does like this flourishing flip thing running off into the distance. And I was just like, that was just kind of goofy. Like, I don't know why it just bothered me. It was just, it came out of nowhere. It felt so unnecessary. Like, it just, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. And like they had that whole like parkour scene because
Oh,
parkour was like super
yeah.
popular back then. And I was just like, what is going on? Like that just seemed really unnecessary. But I like the fact that, you know, there's that faction that is basically like treating children like soldiers, and the kids aren't really kind of smart enough to like be like, hey, this is wrong. Kind of almost go with it because they feel valued and they feel like they're making a difference, and the guy is just obviously like exploiting them and really just manipulating them. And the stuff with SM-33 was just really, really cool, and it gave us an iconic catchphrase. You know, it's been a while since Star Wars kind of had one of those, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Definitely the weakest one, I think, but still a solid series. It's still great. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because last week I had told Charles that I thought last week's episode was the weakest. It was more or less like the filler episodes that we were coming to. Like it kind of just it didn't do much. It just kind of set up for future episodes. I thought this one was really good. It definitely left us with a lot of questions. I don't think Jod gave the credits to those people. I think him and SM-33 might have taken them out, especially because we see how formidable SM-33 is just in general right before he gets taken down in episode 2.
Dude.
So we know that he's formidable. At the end of the episode, we even like he grows or whatever to really like try to rip all the kids limb from limb.
That
So
scene
we
was frightening. I
yeah, it
loved it.
was
It was
the
really cool.
the cinematography for that, like to focus on him to show like him growing strong or like some kind of like existential crisis inside was like it was definitely very frightening to watch, especially because like this is quote unquote a kids show. Like to watch him turn into that was it was kind of frightening. But with this one, like I think with Jod's like cunning ability and stuff like that, they definitely took out that other troop of people, and then he still has the credits on him because he didn't sound so sure that he gave them all away when Wim asked.
Mm.
But like besides that, we got to see a lot of character growth on this one. I think every episode has a kid they kind of focus on, and this one was definitely all about Neel and Neel's kindness and what he could do to get people back together. Even though people may think he's weak and a coward, he actually shows his strength by not wanting to be the fighter. Like he's not going to be the aggressor in any situations. Like he really thinks methodically about things and doesn't want to rush in. Though he has that little kid hope and ambition, like, oh, if I was in a conflict, I would just say sorry. Or the only time I was in a fight was when my brother stole my protractor and then he sat on my head.
Which is the nerdiest phrase that has ever been
Yeah.
uttered.
Oh,
And he
my
literally
God.
loses the fight to the little brother that we've seen in the
Yeah.
show that is literally less than half his size. You know?
Yeah. So it like I thought this episode was really well done. The only thing that this episode didn't do well was, and almost every single episode hasn't done it. We've had like no real growth in KB's character at all. Like we found out in episode 3 that she has a health issue and that the visor is also a health monitor. But we didn't find out in episode 3 and now episode 4 if that health monitor is a risk with them being outside of the barrier and not being connected to whatever's going on At-Attin. So we don't know if her health is an issue. We don't really know what she's seeing. We can just kind of assume that it's able to target on things, especially we saw in this episode, like when they were doing like the target practice training the kids, like she was the best of them all. But
Right.
we also saw like how robotic she is in a way because she doesn't know what a high five is. Like Wim is like just giving her first high five. And like they're not really growing her character. She's just kind of doing things. She speaks to Kim at the end of the episode and Kim gives her some advice, but there is no growth in KB's character yet. And that's something now that we're halfway through the season, I would like to see more of. I think that we need to know more about KB. She can't just be this robotic girl that kind of walks through life because I had people on threads comment they don't know if she's like a humanoid or like a cyborg. And I'm like, no, KB's an actual girl from At-Attin. She just wears the visor and she's into technology and can do all these different things. But it just shows the way they portrayed her. People are now thinking that she's some kind of humanoid cyborg.
Maybe it's just because I find her portrayal fascinating because I do like kind of stoic and robotic characters. And there's just kind of something a little eerie and off about her where I'm not, I guess, starving for an explanation or character growth. Like I'm like, all right, like they're going to do something with her, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we're going to get kind of an explanation of what her health condition was, if it even really exists. It might be one of those, what's the term? Where like a parent will kind of implant the idea that a child is weak and feeble and
Yeah.
like Munchausen, I think it's called.
Yeah, it is
Um,
Munchausen's.
yeah, like it could be like that kind of
Like Gypsy
situation.
Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
While we're on that topic, I've been reading everybody's fan theories that I come across, dude, and one of the ones about KB that I really like. I don't know if I necessarily want them to go with this at all, but it is a very interesting fan theory. Was that some people are speculating that certain moments with KB we're seeing maybe force sensitivity. And so her medical condition that they're treating on At-Attin is suppressing her abilities. So now that she's away from home and she's not getting whatever medical treatments that were deemed necessary on At-Attin, that those abilities are starting to come to light. Hence the reason why she was able to be a bullseye with a blaster when she's never held a blaster or shot one before. other things where she was able to, like in episode 3 when they're trying to escape. What's the name of the pirate world? I always forget.
Borgo?
Borgo. They're trying to escape Borgo. And then, like we talked about it, they make that joke after she tells that there's somebody around the corner. And they're like, I guess KB's a Jedi too. So they could be hinting at that, which would be kind of cool to see, because it would kind of, to me, it would give more background on what's going on in At-Attin, because like how on this planet that was secluded are there no Jedi that live there or force sensitive individuals, like how are they able to keep that from happening? Because force sensitivity isn't concentrated to the inner rim, the mid rim, or anything, which At-Attin we've pretty much have figured out is definitely in the unknown regions. But dude, I liked the episode a lot. I loved seeing Neel as this, because you gotta like, the way I think about it is that Neel is just a kid, right, who's never seen war, and it's just like a kid here where they get told about war and they don't understand it because they're like, why can't everybody just say I'm sorry and forgive each other for everything? And then you have the character, I want to say her name is Hane. I know it starts with an H. I can't remember specifically, but that's all that little girl has known her whole life is fighting. And like Anthony said, they put child soldiers on the front lines of battle, especially like her character, as well as there was another child character in the very beginning of that episode that happened upon Wim, Neel, Fern, and KB. And so it just shows that there's different realities for these two groups of kids. And then I totally agree. That was just crazy. The guy being like, okay, if you want us to take you there, you have to go and lead the raid. And he's just putting kids out to be cannon fodder. He just wants them to get shot first so he can see where the shots are coming from and, strategy wise. And then he's visibly upset when his daughter, who has made a connection with Neel, decides that, no, I'm going to go up there with them. And he's like, no, you don't need to do that. And she's like, I'm going to do that. And he goes, okay, fine. You want to go up there and get shot first? You can go ahead and do that.
New
And
rock stars related the father to Joseph Kony. They were
Yeah,
like,
that.
he
Oh, wow.
emboldens the children to like make them think like, oh, here we honor the children, but actually it's reverse psychology. He makes the kids think that they're important, but realistically they're just child soldiers, which is exactly what Joseph Kony did.
Yeah. And then another thing I wanted to touch on that you guys talked about was SM-33 at the very end of that episode. Like you guys said, frightening. What it did say to me is it just reminded me that, like, oh, we've seen this like cute pirate droid for the last 3 episodes, and you get accustomed to him and you get attached to him because you're like, oh, he's just this cool droid, Like, yeah, he's been kind of violent from time to time, but most of the time it's been in defense of the kids. But when you see him at the end of that episode, you remember he's not just a droid, like he's a pirate still. And there's a reason why he was on that crew. It wasn't because he was just the pilot or the navigator or however you want to say it. He was definitely offing people as a part of that pirate crew as well.
Yeah, he was kind of an enforcer for sure.
Yeah. So
I want to say so I was watching the episode and just something wasn't kind of sucking me in. Like I just, for whatever reason, I was just like, this episode just seems off. And now I kind of figured out what that feeling was. It reminds me so much of the episode in The Mandalorian called Sanctuary, where basically Mando like ends up on that farming village and kind of teaches them to protect themselves. And yeah, I see that there's kind of a difference because like Mando is kind of doing something like positive and kind of helping these people out. And the war that's happening on what is it, At-Achrann?
At-Achrann.
At-Achrann.
At-Achrann. The war there is, kind of like we don't know who they're fighting or what that conflict is really about, but the main characters kind of join it and kind of contribute to it. And maybe I just felt like it was a little too similar. I don't know. Like, again, I didn't hate this episode. I just feel like it was a little weaker than the other 3.
Well, that, like, At-Achrann is supposed to be a post-apocalyptic planet, and we didn't really touch on it last week. Like, the implications of what Kim said, but these were 9 Old Republic planets that had like unique traits. Like, I guess, I don't know if they were all treasure planets, but now that we've seen that At-Achrann is an exact replica of At-Attin, and I'm assuming all the other AT planets are as well. I'm assuming they're all some kind of replicas. Like, she said that they're listed as destroyed. Like, At-Attin was the only one that, like, there was rumors or like the myths that it was saved from the Old Republic. And what you have to think about, and we didn't really talk about it last week at all, was that means that whoever was controlling these 9 planets and like ordered them destroyed committed genocide on 8 other planets. And we'll probably see those other planets in the next couple episodes. But the fact that At-Attin survived, even though on Kim's computer it was listed as destroyed, like, we didn't take into account like how ruthless the Old Republic government was when they deemed that these planets were too like risky to be like kept. That they were like, you know what? Yeah, we'll just commit genocide on the people that actually live there. And I think that's why these two factions are at war, because they're what's left of the planet. And which also leads me to back to what I was saying, that I don't think Jod gave them the money, because what do they have use for Old Republic credits on an apocalyptic planet that has no real need for money?
It's hard to say, because I feel like there was just something special about At-Attin, where same thing, whereas like even the pirate, the original pirate captain of SM-33, where they found those pillars with all of the coordinates, and he only ordered SM-33 to destroy one of them, as well as take out all the people who have seen, on his crew, who have seen the coordinates to this planet. And it's interesting because something I don't think we talked about last episode either, that I texted all of us about, was the fact that Telos is in Orbesh on the computer that Kim is looking through, which for like me, and I know Anthony, you played that game too. For our listeners, if you don't know about Telos, basically, if you go play the Knights of the Old Republic game, it is the first planet that Darth Revan attacks after he returns from the unknown territories, and it's the first planet that he destroys in the Republic to declare war. So that was like definitely an ode to that, in my opinion. And then also, this is just my wild theory, and I talked about it last week, and I'm hoping that Revan gets mentioned at some point, and I would really like to think that Revan has something to do with these planets that were all hidden for a minute, because Telos was not the only planet that the Sith had absolutely decimated and destroyed. Some of them past the point of ecological repair. In Knights of the Old Republic 2, you go to Telos, but it's basically a station that floats above the planet because the planet is uninhabitable. But also with At-Achrann, I don't think that there's anybody, if this world was destroyed during the Old Republic era, none of these people who live on that planet now know about it or are privy to that information, because it was pointed out by somebody I read on Threads that they don't read Orbesh. They don't know how to read it.
Yeah.
And also, this would be 4,000 years ago. So maybe some people survived on the surface of the planet, but these are their distant ancestors. So it'd be safe to say that, especially with what we've seen of their technology, they still have blasters, but I didn't see them using data pads or anything like that. So there's a giant chance they really don't know anything about their history from 4,000 years ago when the planet would have been destroyed.
Yeah. Another thing I saw in the episode was like people having an issue with the Eopes being on At-Achrann, because as of right now we've only seen the Eopes on Tatooine, but these planets existed more than 4,000 years ago at the same time that Tatooine was founded, because I think as of right now, I think Tatooine's listed as founded in 4200 BBY. So this could actually like add explanation to it. Like maybe the Eopes came from one of these like treasure planets, and then like the people who were settling in Tatooine like brought the Eopes with them. But I saw a lot of people complain because they were like, Eopies have been native to Tatooine, and now we just kind of put them on another planet. But
Well,
we
I
don't
mean,
really know. This
it,
planet's been gone for thousands of years. Like we don't know what the galaxy has benefited from the 9 planets before the other 8 are destroyed. So we
and
don't know what benefits they got from it.
and also once you introduce hyperspace travel, like you're gonna have exports of goods, exports of life. The idea of having some like kind of cattle slash livestock on one planet and one planet specifically is ridiculous when we know in the Star Wars universe that, like hyperspace travel has been possible for countless millennia. Like it's just a silly thing that people want to get hung up on and look for
Yeah.
faults.
Well, like you can even look at Jedi Survivor. One of the first big creatures that you encounter is a Mogu, but you can look it up. They're literally cousins to Wampas on Hoth. They're basically just summertime Wampas. So there's nothing to say that these are like the same exact breed or species as what we've seen on Tatooine.
Yeah, it is weird that they would just choose to use something that's already existing rather than kind of create a creature that is kind of just the first time we've seen it on At-Achrann. But maybe there's an explanation. But if not, like I don't know. Like I've been a Star Wars fan long enough to where I could kind of create my own explanation, or even
Yeah.
just kind of ignore things that are there that don't really make sense. It's like who cares? Like Eopies are cool and stinky.
Yeah, and then I don't know about you guys. Like I don't know if you theorized this right when the episode started, but I thought in the beginning that they did find At-Attin. Like
Mm.
Charles and I talked last week, we were saying like there's no way that they're gonna find At-Attin this quickly because it's too early in the show. Realistically, as of right now, I'm theorizing they don't find At-Attin, like they don't make it back to episode 7. I think they figure out their way back on at the end of episode 6.
Mm.
So it gives them 2 episodes for like some big conflict with Brutus and stuff to really happen. So I didn't think they were gonna find it, but then, like, obviously everything they show was ruse. But I thought that they found it, but landed on the outside of where the utopia is, and then like there's actually this. I guess to relate it to like a popular movie, like it's kind of like in Wicked, where there's this major drought outside of Oz, and like now we're in this post-apocalyptic drought-ridden world right outside of what is like the heart of At-Attin, like this utopia suburbia, but everything outside of it's actually dying and receding in on itself. So at first I thought they found it, but then when they started adding up, like, oh, this is our school, and then like as they got a little further, I was like, yeah, never mind. This is another planet.
Yeah, which I
Yeah,
thought was
that would have been.
interesting.
Go ahead,
No, go
Charles.
for it.
I was going to say that would be a little more plausible for me. I mean, they basically set up that like no one's allowed past the barriers, and the barriers were established as kind of being like in the stratosphere of the planet. If they kind of set it up as like no one's supposed to go past the colony, then I could kind of see that. But as far as we know, it's not like it's not illegal to travel past like the town that the characters live in. But maybe if they set that up a little bit more, I would be kind of more on board with that theory. It'd be interesting. Like, these matching kind of civilizations are popping up everywhere and they're almost identical, but only one is surviving. Why is that one surviving? What's different about it? That could be a cool, interesting thing, but I don't know. Like, I'm not sold on that just yet because they didn't really emphasize that this, Star Wars suburbia had kind of borders past, outer space.
Yeah, I saw something online, and I don't know who I was watching who to give the credit to because I didn't notice it myself on the first watch through. But when they're leaving the planet of At-Attin, there's like 3 red lights, like beacons in the
Mm.
stratosphere. But when they get to At-Achrann, those beacon lights aren't on, which is kind of shows you like, hey, like they're not being protected. And then
Monitored.
also like Yeah, like they're not like this planet is something entirely different, and like something's happened, and obviously like we know what that something is because Kim said that the Old Republic destroyed. Well, the rumor was they destroyed 8 of the 9 planets and left At-Attin, but obviously the what should have happened was all 9 were supposed to be destroyed. So why was At-Attin saved?
And
And then
that's where I think that while the 9 planets were special, At-Attin was the treasure planet, and I'm not sure why, other than what context they've given us so far, especially seeing those solid gold credits were obviously. And it's funny, I think about it, that to me seems like it was probably a lot of credits, solid gold money, and he just gives it to his kid. He's like, this is your lunch money for the week. Like, it seems like they're not even, at least the citizens of At-Attin aren't aware of what value they have there. And then another thing that I'm super curious about is, what is that watchtower for, other than the coordinates for the other 8 planets? What could that be for? Because the kids literally say nobody's allowed in here. You know, they don't know of a single person on their planet that's allowed inside of that tower, which I thought was an interesting tidbit.
I have a couple wild theories. Wild theory number 1 involves Neel's dad, and this one is the most unplausible and probably not going to be true. But I was thinking that in regarding to his age, if we had just to assume when the Onyx Cinder crashed on At-Attin, maybe Wim's dad is the original pirate. And that's why Wim craves adventure. And he's the pirate from At-Attin and just kind of morphed in. The second theory, and I think this one is more plausible, is that the supervisor of At-Attin is the original pirate from the ship. And that's why like it's so important, like they haven't shown who the supervisor is yet, and like their importance, and we don't even know as of right now if anybody's seen the supervisor, which is why like this is just a random theory, just stuff to think about to make the show, I guess, more exciting than it already is like, what if this like the supervisor's been the pirate the whole time and has just kind of been doing stuff, and that's why like you have to schedule a meeting but the supervisor doesn't show their face. Like, I think ultimately what it comes down to is that that original pirate was on At-Attin. And, like, we know that the reason why all the people in the ship are dead is because he ordered the people to die. And what I'm assuming happened was on the adventure through all the other planets, like, after finding them and seeing, like, the genocide happen and finding, like, At-Achrann with the only one with a stable tower to show the coordinates to At-Attin, like that, like I think At-Achrann was the last planet they went to, not the first planet they went to, because he would have no reason to visit the other ones. But somewhere along there, something happened. So either they crash land and he morph like whoever this captain in morphs in with the people of At-Attin, or he's become a leader of At-Attin, which is why like when, and I'm looking too far into this, but Wim's father like had some kind of like existential crisis going on his face in episode 3. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm just scared for my kids. Like there was a reason they're focusing in on him. And
Yeah,
I think like they have to do something with that. And then the only other thing I noticed from the episode that like isn't like a theory, but you ever notice that the creature in his eye that I think is named like in SM-33's eye, like, I think his name's Snowball.
Yeah.
Every time he tries to speak about At-Achrann, or like when he going to speak about At-Attin, like that creature shows up and like starts like pulling on wires. That creature is from the time that those orders were given, and he's even like enforcing it, which is I don't think SM-33 has had the memory issues that he's pretended to have. Not like aside from the I don't know nothing about an At-Attin, but like when he repeats himself and stuff like that, like I think it's because Snowball is messing with the wires inside of his eye, and it was like right before he spills everything. I think Snowball had fallen out of his eye, and
Mm.
like you see him pause for a second because he's like, is Snowball gonna stop me this time? And it's like, No, you're not going to stop me. Okay, this is what I know about At-Attin.
Yeah, I think Snowball is an actual like crew member of the original like pirate group. I I really hope that it doesn't turn out to be like he's the pirate leader. I think that would be a little ridiculous, but definitely like
The
a crew
pirate's a
member.
worm or
Yeah.
a rodent.
Yeah, definitely a crew member, like a weird like crew member who, knows a lot and is going to be kind of a vessel for exposition. I can kind of see that happening.
Yeah.
Um
I
I don't
also
know,
saw
like
something. I
good?
saw something. I think it was from New Rockstars again, that they were saying that Jod knows more about the Onyx Cinder and At-Attin that he's leading on.
Yeah.
Because when they're mentioning, like, I think there was something in the episode that they were mentioning At-Attin going there, and the camera kind of pans over towards Jod, and it's like, well, what's Jod supposed to know? And
Mm.
we already know he was a leader of a pirate gang. We don't know, like, of how long he was, like, the leader there. But obviously, like, he's already, like, we got John Wood, we got Captain Silvo, and what did they call him on episode
Crimson Jack.
3? Yeah, Crimson Jack. So, like, there's a lot to him that we don't know. I don't think, I mean, one of my original theories that was that Jod was the original pirate of the Onyx Cinder, but I feel like SM-33 would have said something
Yeah.
unless he was ordered to forget him.
Yeah, and
But
also
I don't think Ja would have left At-Attin if he
that
was
ship
already
had been
there.
buried for a while. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that crew that was remaining in the ship was very decayed. So I'm wondering how long that ship had
I think
been
we're
kind of
seeing
buried.
people are theorizing online, or like they're basing it off of something. They're saying that ship was on At-Attin for about 50 years.
50 years?
Yeah, like, or
Yeah.
anywhere between 30 to 50.
Well, and that's where I feel like it, and the only reason why I feel like it has to be longer is that the ship was completely covered in the foliage around it. Where I feel like it has to be longer than 50 years because it was completely overgrown other than one specific port that they were able to get through to get into the ship. Like when it comes out of the ground, you see roots, things that had grown around it for years and years. So 50 years
Unless
sounds
it was
good.
purposefully hidden.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, it would just be hard to make stuff grow around that purposefully in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it'd have to be like 30 to 50 years.
And also, why wasn't it discovered? Like, because to me, if the original captain had landed on At-Attin, the treasure planet that he seeked, why would he not get his treasure, get back on his ship, and leave? So I feel like there has to be more to that. The supervisor, I mean, I don't know, because when they talk about the great works, this isn't something new to them. This
Yeah.
is something that they've done for generations upon generations, which I'm still wondering what the great works is to begin with.
But most of the pirates, I mean, other than wanting to pillage, what they're really after is money and power. And if you're the supervisor, you have the money, you have the power, and like everybody now works for you. So I don't know if that's true or not. And there's a lot like we have
Yeah.
to uncover. I think so. I was wrong last week about this, where I theorized that this week's episode was going to be a flashback episode. I am now
No more
going
flashback
to
episodes.
I'm now
Same.
doubling or nothing on next week being the flashback episode, while like, and next week's episode I'm also predicting is going to focus on KB because they're going to use her to try to reset SM-33 in a way that he tells them about At-Attin and what happened, but doesn't kill them. I think that's going to be pretty much the basis of the entire episode.
I
If I
really
had
hope
to
not.
like,
I hope they learn their lesson with the Acolyte. Because, like I said, as a person that really liked that show, those flashback episodes killed me. You know, so I hope that
One
they
is
don't.
good. It was the second one that ruined it.
I still will die on the hill that it should have been in a linear order as far as timeline.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do this whole. I get that they wanted to make it a mystery, but it's like, dude, the mystery was over in the first episode. You realize that they were two different people immediately. So I hope.
Yeah.
I don't mind flashback sequences at all. Like if there's like
I
a
think that's what I'm
10-minute.
trying to say. I don't
Not
think
the
there's
whole
going to
episode.
be. Yeah, because
Yeah.
like what I was saying is that it's going to focus on KB. So she is going to spend a good portion of this episode working on SM-33. And then once she gets it to the point, that's when the flashback starts. So I think there will be a sequence to end the episode.
Okay, I can do, dude. I would love that. Like a little 10 minutes of the episode, which also, by the way, these episodes are just a little over 30 minutes if you include intro and outro. And I'm actually kind of pressed about that. I'm like, I want 45-minute episodes, dude. Like, I loved this entire episode. I hated the way it ended because I was like, you mother. I had so many freaking
Well,
questions.
that's what I've been
And
telling you is that it seems like Disney films the show all at once as like some kind of long, elaborate movie and then cuts it right when they need to because none of the runtimes make sense. And Disney for Star Wars, all the other stuff that they've done has had the Marvel stuff has kind of fallen like the Star Wars stuff as well, where they split it at like segmented times, but they don't follow traditional norms with like in terms of TV stuff. Like if you watch an episode of Stranger Things, you're getting usually about an hour and a half. If you were to watch Grey's Anatomy, you're in for all day because everybody gets sucked in. But you're in for an hour episode at a time. For this, they really just cut the episode off when they feel like they got what they needed to get out of it, which is why I think they film it all at once as like this long elaborate movie and are like, okay, break here, break here, break here.
well, I think I can sort of agree on that. What I do like is something that Anthony touched on when we were talking about what we were hoping for. And Anthony, I hope you got it a little bit, but it's basically so far, other than, the first, like in the first two episodes, they start on At-Attin, they get to Borgo, and then third episode, they're escaping from Borgo, they get to the moon. At the end of the third episode, they get off the moon. And then the fourth episode was spent on At-Achrann. So I'm hoping that like fifth episode is like 10 minutes of them getting off of that planet and getting SM-33 back to the ship and picking their next destination. And I'm kind of thinking like if I was in that situation that they're in, I would definitely take the coordinates of the other several planets and start going to these other planets to see if maybe there's another watchtower that the coordinates for At-Attin aren't destroyed on and stuff like that. But I know, Anthony, you said you were like, I'm hoping for like an episode to episode, planet to planet kind of
Yeah,
deal.
planet hopping adventure, kind of
Yeah.
a episodic, and rather than just one kind of connected, like, and that's what I was hoping for the Mandalorian to be. And the Mandalorian kind of went a whole different direction with like the story of getting Grogu back to the Jedi and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that this series could really capitalize on like all the different cool locations. They are exploring, they are trying to get home, and yeah, I'm getting my fill of it and enjoying. It's different than what I thought it would be and what I wanted, but not in a bad way. Like a more of like a I'm pleasantly surprised and I'm really along for the ride.
Do
And
you think
all the mysteries are interesting. Like all of them are fun. It's not obnoxious to where like the entire like story is just built around the mysteries, and ultimately those mysteries don't really have a good payoff, which is a big criticism I have of the Acolyte. Like this is interesting stuff, and I feel like it's paced really well to where like I feel like they're going to give us more explanations. I feel like it's on track to going somewhere interesting, and all the different mysteries will have satisfying payoffs, and I definitely hope that that's the case.
do you think This is another thing that I've been thinking about, the way these kind of shows have been working with like Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian, like everything right now seems like it's culminating in Mandalorian and Grogu because they've already like they're starting to announce like cameos that might take place in that.
Mm.
Do you think that like because this is during the same time as all the other Mandoverse stuff, like do you think that I don't know if I relate it to like an Avengers, but like some kind of movie that has like one of these weird kind of payoffs that everything they've shown previously like means something. But like these kids might accidentally appear in Mandalorian and Grogu because like Charles in the beginning of the episode said that this is like in the unknown regions, but these planets are actually somewhere within the Hydian Way. Or at least that's where we're like kind of led to believe because where Borgo is, we don't know how long the travel was to get to Borgo because they kind of just fell out of hyperspace. But I don't know if these planets are in the unknown region. They're just kind of in an area of space where like these nebular clouds just hide them.
Yeah.
So like is this series a payoff to something that eventually is going to help the Mandalorian and Grogu kind of help like defeat whatever he's after. Like if it is like a remnant of like if it is Thrawn's Imperial remnant or if it's would it still be Moff Gideon?
Yeah.
So
I
like
hope not. I hope not. I hope
Same.
that the skeleton crew kind of remains a little like in its own space. I think that the Grogu and Mandalorian movie is going to deal with, kind of the somehow Palpatine has returned plot void that episode 9 left us on, and I could care less. Like, as clumsy and as like frustrating as that line was in episode 9, I don't need the main point, like the ending conclusion of the Mandalorian story, to explain how Palpatine came back, and I feel like that's where they're going with it. And I hope I'm wrong, but
yeah,
I,
because
I
that's Grogu's purpose is to get the
yeah,
midichlorians from his blood and do the testing.
yeah,
Well,
I
I feel
know
like
they've
Grogu's
been said.
purpose. I'm sorry. I feel
Oh,
like
no worries.
Grogu's purpose was the same thing that we saw in Bad Batch with Omega, which is that I don't because they never directly related Omega to what
Well,
happened with
she's not force
Palpatine,
sensitive. Her
but
blood is just the
she is force sensitive
catalyst. I
though.
don't know what the word.
She
No,
is she
she
was
has the
just the first person.
ability.
No, go
She
for
has
it.
the ability to accept midichlorians. Like her blood is special, but she's not force sensitive. Like because that's why they have Asajj try to train her, but she's not. She's not like this force sensitive person, and that's why like they kind of like were fooling us. But her blood is important because like the way that she's cloned and set up is in a way that can accept the blood from Jedi
Yeah,
and like
I mainly thought
from
of it
force
as the way
sensitive beings.
they were the first way that they were able to figure out that they can clone force sensitivity. Because that has been a big thing in books too. I believe that you couldn't really make force sensitive clones. I mean, there was the storyline. I think there was the Luke Skywalker had a clone that they made of his hand.
Yeah,
There
that
was a
was
storyline
in the
about that.
original Thrawn trilogy, and in the old canon, the extended universe or legends, however you want to describe it, that was never a rule, because they didn't know what the Clone War was. Like, they didn't know if it was like a bunch of cloned Jedi fighting a bunch of clone Sith or anything like that. Like, it was always left ambiguous. But there were instances where characters were cloned, and like Jorus Kabath, Luke Skywalker, it's like two
Yeah, it was a
U's and stuff.
W.
Yeah, yeah, and
Well, they also
they.
bring back Sidious in Legends too, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
That
yeah, they
happened.
do. Yeah,
Which is
and
like when he returns. And why were they so upset when he returns in Episode 9? If all the people who love Legends so much, like Darth Sidious, kind of does the same thing in Legends.
Well, in the Legends canon, like at least from what I remember, like that wasn't very cool either. Like people are like, really? Like you're gonna bring back Palpatine? There's other things that you could do. I
Yeah, it's like
remember,
Dragon Ball. Like,
yeah,
oh, we killed Frieza. What's the next big bad? Golden Frieza.
yeah, yeah. hey, we killed Perfect Cell. Now we have, like super ultra mega Perfect Cell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I remember, gosh, what was that? Dark Empire, I believe it was called, right? Like Dark Empire graphic. I just remember, yeah, Dark Empire and Dark Empire 2. I remember the reception for that storyline being kind of not favorable.
Yeah.
Because the only cool thing about that story is like the idea that like Luke is seduced to the dark side and why he's seduced to the dark side and how he kind of frees himself from that. And they were establishing, the fact that Leia is about to give birth to her third child, and there's kind of heavily hinting that like the Emperor is using that child as a vessel for evil, which kind of ties into, I can go on about Anakin Solo like for days and days and days, but that's something that he struggles with. Like he knows that, the Emperor touched him, and is he going to, be tempted to the dark side, and is he going to follow in his grandfather's namesake and be an evil person, and ultimately the storyline goes in a completely different direction. But yeah, I don't remember a lot of people being super stoked about Palpatine being brought back in the original Legends stories either.
Yeah, no, that was relatively unpopular from what I've read. Like it was not a popular sequence. But you can't say they didn't use source material, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly picking and choosing, and again, like it doesn't bother me. I'm not offended by them, kind of going in different directions than the established continuity from the 90s on. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, like just I don't know. Like the fact that you brought back Palpatine at the end, or not the end, at the beginning of episode 9, and just explained it with a throwaway line was, I guess, all I needed to know. And I know that they're planting the seeds, and I know that that's a big part of what the Mandalorian is. But every time they go in that direction, I just roll my eyes. It's like, we know, don't make this the focus of the series. Like, don't make
Don't
this
make
the
us relive this.
yeah. Like, people got it and people were upset about it. You explaining it and like trying to pretend that you had a plan all along is not going to help things, and it's just going to irritate me
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a fan.
I
Man,
mean,
man,
I want to see.
mansplaining Palpatine is going to be a problem.
Well,
Yeah,
I
mansplaining
just want to
Palpatine.
see, at least with Skeleton's crew, with Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't want it to be the focal point of the movie. I want them to have their same thing with the shows. I want them to have their own conflicts and things that they have to overcome and rise against. And then with Skeleton Crew, I don't think this should really have to do with anything related to what either the Skywalker saga or anything else. I love that this is like we get the references of Old Republic and like things, like one of the funniest things where they when they're talking with Kim, where they're like an Alderaan, and Kim goes, "Oh, missed the war, did you?" And they're like, "What war?" I love
They've
that
missed every
moment.
war.
Yeah, they missed
Yeah.
all of it.
They missed
I
the entire Star Wars that is
yeah.
the title. Like,
Yeah, so I
yeah.
I want them, because what I love about the show, which I was really I was worried when I saw them training with the combatants on At-Achrann, was I don't want them to militarize these kids. You know? I don't want them to be they don't have to be fighters. They can be fighters in their own right, but I don't want them to go on, what and that's what I loved about the interaction with, like I said, I think her name is Hayne. I'll have to look it up. Somebody in the comments can correct me. But I loved her interaction with Neel, because it showed that like Neel isn't he's not interested in fighting. Even if there was a war to be fought, he's not interested in it. He doesn't want to fight, and it's not and to part of it is maybe he is scared or things of that nature, but I don't want them to feel like they should have to make this a big fight conflict thing. Obviously they're going to have to fight at some point in the show, but I feel like that should be left up to Jod and potentially SM-33 if we can get him back to working order. I don't.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No, you're good.
agree. Let them be kids. Like that's the hook. The entire series kind of rests on the fact that these are kids and they feel real and true and honest. We don't need to turn them into badasses. We don't need to turn them into Jedi or, anything like that. Just let them be kids as long as they can be, as long as it makes sense. Obviously, actors age up and everything, and then you could take a more kind of mature tone. But yeah, going back a couple of topics, I don't want to see them, the skeleton crew. I don't want to see them in the Grogu and Mandalorian movie. If we don't know what's going to happen in that movie, but if, Mando and Grogu survive, it would be nice if they had like a crossover kind of moment where, the skeleton crew met up with Mando while he's on a hunt for a bounty or something like that. That would be kind of cool, but I don't want them in the movie.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, Charles, the girl's name is Hana.
Hana. See, I was almost there.
You were
I
close.
was missing an A.
Which is kind of wild how quickly Neel is switched up from Runa. Like, he's like in love with Runa and is like, you know what? Screw you, Runa. I like Hana.
Well, he's
He's just
also
a
trapped
player.
in the middle of the galaxy,
Yeah.
not knowing if he'll ever
Yeah.
get home. And then also, dude,
Yeah.
when I was 10
Yeah.
years old, dude, I
I
liked
had tons
Ayla
of
one
crushes.
day. I liked
Yeah.
Chelsea the next day. It was whoever was nicer to me the next day, I was probably having a crush on,
But the other thing that we haven't touched on yet is like, did you guys notice like the vehicles on At-Achrann? Like that was clearly like one of those separatist ship, like or not ship, but like one of the battle, one of these things.
Oh,
One of these
we
bad
have
boys
a.
right here.
Oh, they
Like it,
look like
like
yeah,
they were,
tanks.
yeah. So it was literally like one of like the separatist tanks going around, and they look like they're wearing like
The Trade
like
Federation tanks.
yeah, like or like imperial like armor or something like that, but like the eye holes are cut out, um like the stuff that they're wearing is wild, and like I don't think this is High Republic stuff. Like I think people, well, obviously SM-33's original captain knew where it was. Like At-Achrann, in my opinion, is visible to the galaxy. Like they've been able to get things like Star Wars Joseph Kony. I don't know what his name was, but like he was like he said that they were selling hides.
Wait, that hit me late. My bad.
Yeah, but so like he was selling hides, and like so I think they've been selling it to other people. Ultimately, what this show ends with is um that this planet is no longer hidden at the end of the season. I don't know what you think about this. I know, Anthony, you have to get going. Do you want to give your final thoughts before you have to sign off on like what do you think? Like, why do you think there's separatist tanks or the hiddenness of these planets?
I mean, it could be anything. It could be, randomly, the Trade Federation or the separatists, kind of came across these planets and didn't escape. And, like you have like their kind of armory, like, just being around to use. It could be a colony that was ran by the separatists and maybe to kind of establish a civilization outside of the control of the Republic. Something that kind of goes back to the values of the old Republic. I don't know. And I'm along for the ride. I like all the speculation, and it's just a lot of fun. Like I'm kind of going in with just an open mind, and so far I haven't been disappointed.
Definitely.
Sweet. Do you want to give your final thoughts, Charles, before we wrap this episode up?
Yeah. Just on that note, all I want to say is it's difficult to think of the separatists doing that and then not using that planet to their benefit, and the Republic not knowing where they were, to me, because it seemed like everywhere the separatists were, the Republic ended up eventually, or that there was some conflict. But it would be really cool to see like a Clone Wars callback, with the weapons and things that they're using on At-Attin. And I felt an Imperial vibe from the opposing people. The thing that makes me not think that it has anything to do with the outside galaxy is mainly Hana's father, who is their leader, who says we don't deal with off-worlders. But that also could be from a negative experience, maybe from the separatists coming there beforehand. you know? So there's a lot of things to speculate or theorize. But like Anthony said, I'm just going into the rest of the show. Like I said, every episode, I just have an open mind. I haven't been disappointed yet. Every episode has been great for me because it just makes me feel like a kid again. And I also have a 6-year-old nephew who I'm super excited to share this with because I feel like this will be the best intro into Star Wars I can give him before I'm like, all right, now we're gonna watch the movies, you know. So I'm genuinely excited. I do hope we learn more about KB's health condition, if it's even a health condition. And the last thing I want to say is the most beautiful moment of this episode for me was the emotional beat with Wim and Fern, where Wim, tries to console Fern, who is he can tell she's upset. She's on the verge of tears. And he just tells her, like, we wouldn't have made it this far if I was the captain. Like,
Yeah, that was a
you're
great line.
and I love that, because it showed that Wim is gaining emotional maturity in these episodes, where like, yeah, he's still kind of a kid, like at the beginning of the episode he's running around, he's going whoosh 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 whoosh, but then stuff gets real quick, and by the end of the episode he has that emotional maturity to be like, hey, you're doing a great job, like I couldn't have
Yeah.
done what you're doing, and then Fern first has that moment where she's like, so you expect me to do everything? And she's kind of mad. And then she like figures out what they need to do to get SM-33. Mention it does
Yeah.
almost get them all killed, but she was smart enough to figure out what to tell SM-33 to kind of bring those things out of his memory banks. So I'm super excited, and I can't wait for this coming Tuesday to see what else happens. And what about you,
Yeah,
Brandon? What are your final thoughts?
I think I predicted during our episode 1 and 2 like breakdown review that like and Fern were gonna like start off as like opposing characters. Like they weren't gonna like each other, but towards the end they were going to form some kind of bond. I speculated that it would be more like romantic or whatever, kind of like a like a Timmy Turner and like a Cindy kind of thing, where like they really like they're supposed to be the two people that hate each other, but they grow like real close and fond of each other. So, like, I kind of thought that that was going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but overall, like, this show has just been fun. I've been pretty much my family doesn't really watch Star Wars. I'm like the lone Star Wars person in my family, and I've been begging them all to watch Skeleton Crew because like it's just a cute, lighthearted show. It really kind of fits this holiday season, like with like friends and family, and everything about it's been really cool. And though I haven't really been correct on any of my theories, and Hondo still hasn't popped up yet,
Hey, we
I
got his
was,
ship. We
but
got his ship,
yeah,
dude.
but I just like thinking about like what could happen in the way they leave off these episodes, and I've been enjoying it. And who knows, maybe by the end of this, I'll get one of like my 300 theories correct.
What is the name that they gave like the leader of the planet? I can't remember. Like the benefactor or what was
The
it?
supervisor.
Supervisor. Yeah, what if that's Hondo?
Yeah,
Like that's the
yeah, yeah.
reveal. It's been Hondo all along.
Oh, you
It's
missed it
just
last episode. Charles was like, if you mention Honda one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. And I was like, okay, so hear me out. Next week's episode is
Yeah.
going to be a flashback episode because Hondo is going to knock out Jod. And he was like, and then he just started dying. But yeah, um, he's the cameo character we're getting. I'm still
I
riding high on that one.
dude,
I'm
I just
sure.
don't want to see your heart broken. I am hoping for you, because I want to see him too, but I'm really hoping more for you that we get this, because I don't want to get to the end of the series and then you be like, and they didn't freaking show Hondo, because we literally
Yeah,
saw
it's
his
okay.
ship,
I
So
texted you earlier. I renewed my Disney pass earlier today. We're gonna go see if this
we're
show
gonna go
doesn't
see
give us
Hondo in
Hondo,
person.
I'm gonna go see Hondo, and him and I are gonna have words.
Wave to him.
I'm gonna get a video of Brandon just yelling at the animatronic in the middle of the pre-show.
But with that being said, I think this is a good place to end the episode. If you've watched this on YouTube, remember smash that like button, press subscribe. It really helps us. If you're watching or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or wherever else you get your podcast, please rate the show, follow us. It helps us grow. It helps us bring this conversation to more people. And we will see you guys after Christmas.
Happy holidays.
May the
Bye.
force be with you.